y'all planning for this? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA Podcast. I am your co-host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today, instead of Micah Shalansky, who I've done now hundreds of podcasts with, I have another legend, Benjamin Brandt, a good friend of ours, host of Dadvisors Mastermind, future guest on our panel of success at XYPN. Ben, we're here at the AI CPA Engage conference recording this podcast live and in person.
I'm so excited to be here. It's been a blast the last day and a half or so. Learned a lot, and you guys are fantastic hosts.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, Ben, always excited to have you on the podcast. Today, we want to talk about a fee increase that you've recently implemented with your clients to reflect the value that you're providing, but really want to step back and look at it from the angle of that this fee increase wasn't just about like trying to increase the margins of your firm or some like economics ratio where you say, hey, what's the maximum pain we can extract from clients? It was really about you had specific goals for your firm, additional value you wanted to deliver to clients, and this was the means, by, I guess, if you will, of raising capital or raising cash flow to cover that new value.
Yeah, and I guess I've seen feedback about fee raises and things that you're just looking to extract maximum pain. You're just looking to put money straight to the bottom line. And I really want to push back on that to say that a fee raise can be a lot about delivering more value to clients. If you think about if you're invested in the markets, your fees are going to go up over time because portfolio values generally, maybe not this year, but generally go up over time. What would happen if you had that revenue today? How might you redeploy that to better your clients? So I think we do live in a world where clients that pay a higher fee can have more value as a result of a fee raise. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. And there certainly is, I don't go as far to call it a straw man argument. There certainly are advisors in some corner of our industry that are raising fees just for the sake of raising fees. I get that might exist somewhere, but the advisors who listen to this podcast, which is now like 50,000 downloads a month, the advisors that listen to this podcast, the advisors that we talk to, they truly and deeply care about their clients. Like I talk to these advisors, but I talk to you, and I know that you very much care in your heart of hearts about the success of your clients. So a fee raise is not something you're thinking willy-nilly, like, oh, these are random people, these are random consumers. These are people you've known, some of them your entire career, that you care deeply about. And so it wasn't an easy decision to raise fees. And it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't about extracting maximum fee. It's about delivering massive value and charging a fee that's accordance with that.
Yeah, and I would encourage advisors that have been wanting to or thinking about raising their fees, don't focus on the straw man argument that there's this sort of evil financial advisor that wants to really turn the screws on their clients and extract maximum pain. I think there are some really legitimate areas we can redeploy that revenue to increase value. So the two things that I'm going to do is I'm going to hire a new lead advisor. I've always focused on retirement planning and cash flow. And over the last few years with RTS and things like that, I've gone a lot deeper, holistic plan as well, with tax value. But I want to hire an advisor that knows more about taxes than I do, so we can focus even deeper on that area, including doing returns as well now. And also with estate planning. With having a virtual podcast, we have clients in nearly every state. That's something that I haven't been able to keep up with, is the nuances of estate planning in every single state. So I want to hire an advisor that has more knowledge in that area. And that's something specifically we're looking for on the job description in our hire. So we just wouldn't have the revenue to hire, a person with, a CFP, CFA, 10 years experience without, getting more revenue. So I think clients will directly benefit from paying a higher fee, and that we'll be able to attract talent that, frankly, it is very expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive. And I love this approach. Again, we all have head trash around fees in general, whether it's raising them, keeping them same, setting them, whatever the case may be. So to kind of set aside, I think even just for a moment, about what is the correct fee, it really didn't even go through a mental exercise and say, if I had another $100,000 of cash flow in my practice, be that from market appreciation, be that from a fee increase, where would I reinvestment? What could that mean? And Ben, you said specifically, that means offering retirement tax services, RTS. It means being able to hire another advisor. It means being able to invest in technology like Holistic Plan. But I think for advisors, to your point, if you're thinking about fees, raising them or not, what would you do with additional revenue? How could you convert that into additional value for your clients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're going to get that revenue eventually through just market growth and through people, maybe referrals or things like that. But yeah, if you have a plan to reinvest that, raising fees could just get you that now, and then the client would get that value now. So it's really kind of a virtuous cycle to charge, think about what your premium service would be even before you think about the revenue. If I could deliver the maximum value that I could, what would that look like? Then figure out what it would cost, and then that would be a way to sort of reverse engineer what your fee might be. So you don't want to charge the least possible. You don't want to charge the most possible. You probably want to be somewhere in that range. But I think you want to figure out what a premium service would look like, and then find a fee that is at least average, if not maybe somewhere close to a premium fee.
I love that thought exercise. We all get so anchored on what we're doing right now, or what we grew up doing, or what whoever mentored us is doing. But I like that to set aside and say, all right, if I was charging a premium fee, let's say if I doubled my fee, just for imagination's sake, what value would I have to deliver to clients so that I thought, boy, that's a really good fee. Like, clients are really getting a lot of value out of it. And then you can work backwards from there. But these thought exercises of pushing it to the extreme, not how do I increase my value by 5%? What if I had to double my value? What would that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could even take it to an extreme. Like, what's the most possible value that I could describe? I think you would even journal it out, and you could even start with hyperbole. Like, I'll cut my client's grass on the weekends. You could just get as crazy as possible to journal out every area of value that you could deliver, and then of course, once you've sort of gotten that out of your brain onto your journal, going back and saying, okay, I think this is actually really. Sometimes you have to get crazy to find the next thing. And I really encourage journaling for things like that. But yeah, figure out what that maximum value could be. Value expansion is something is a term we've been kind of kicking around lately. But figure out where you can expand that value, put that on paper, and then see what you can actually implement in your business. And I think it's an interesting thing. So there's two areas that we could focus on. We can only focus on one at a time, right? So you can either focus on fee compression, and I think that's where the industry has been focusing on. And spoiler alert, Vanguard and Fidelity are decades ahead of you.
Yes.
And then the startup companies have VC access that you don't have access to, so they don't even have to make money. They just have to have a greater pool in the future that'll buy them. So fee compression, a lot of advisors are focusing on that, but they don't understand that that's already a losing battle. There's always going to be someone that's going to do it cheaper than you. And they're 2 decades ahead of you. And if you find a client based on you being the cheapest, they're eventually going to find an advisor that's going to do it cheaper, or a robot that'll do it cheaper, or Vanguard that'll do it for almost free. So we can't focus on fee compression because we'll lose that game. I would encourage advisors instead to focus on value expansion. And so if you're always expanding your value, it's only reasonable to believe that at some point you're going to charge at least an average fee, which is somewhere between 0 and 3%, if not eventually delivering so much value that you can in your mind justify a premium fee. I would say my fee is average, or a little bit above average, 1.5% up to $2 million. But I know there's a lot of advisors that would not agree. But I would encourage them not to focus on fee compression. I would encourage them to focus on value expansion.
Yeah, Ben, two interesting things came to mind as you were talking about that. We're going to talk a lot about your fee increase in our July members webinar, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about the journaling that you did around, like the physical journaling that you did would be a big piece. Like what kind of stuff were you journaling out, and were you in fact writing it down on a piece of paper during this process?
So I joined Ben Hardy's mastermind group. I hit $100 million in assets, 80 households. That was sort of my goal, a version of my goal. It changed over the years, but when I first met Matt, I think it was 35. Taylor Schulte and Roger Whitney, my mastermind group, Jeff Rose. I set these goals years and years ago that by my 40th birthday, I was going to get to this asset level and this household level, and then I was going to stop taking new clients. And I did that. And I said, I guess it's just feet up on the handlebars and it's downhill for the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
And I stuck to that for about 4 months. And then I just felt like feels like there's more to do. Like I wasn't content. I hit my goal and I was happy with that and I celebrated that, but it just felt like there was something more that I needed to do. I didn't know what that was. I knew that I've been surging with clients and I have a really good intentional career balance and life balance. And so I knew I didn't want to just collect clients indefinitely because eventually, every 10 clients is another 2 days of surge a year. And so I knew I didn't want to mess that up. So I needed to join a mastermind group or join a coaching program where I could figure out future self. What's the future version of my career look like? And that's where I read The Gap and the Gain, and I read Who Not How by Ben Hardy, co-authored by Dan Sullivan. So I joined Ben Hardy's mastermind group, and he focuses a lot on journaling. Journaling about 2x growth, 10x growth, journaling about future self, journaling about unique abilities. And so that's a lot of the journaling that I did around what's the future version of myself, and then who can I get on my team that will help me deliver that value. And so I swore up and down, and Matt, you can attest to this, that I would never hire an advisor.
Yep.
But it wasn't until my sort of life and career goals changed that I said, I really can't do this on my own. If you can only spend an hour once, can I become the estate planning expert or the tax planning expert, or can I just hire that person and sort of hit fast forward on that massive value for my clients? So just I bought the Remarkable 2, which is like the digital notepad that's taking over the universe. Every cool guy I know had one, so I had to buy one. But I would have at least filled up 2 or 3 legal pads with journaling on these ideas.
And I appreciate you highlighting that. I think it's critical to get that out on paper, whether it's physical paper or the Remarkable or typing it. We sometimes fool ourselves, and I know I've done this a lot of times, of saying, oh, I've thought this all the way through in my mind. But that's not the same, and there's some science behind the sides of your brains and whatnot. But thinking it through in your brain is not the same as writing it out. So if you're thinking through in your brain, in this example, I can't do a fee increase because I've maxed out on value. Okay, that may be a thought, but actually write that down. Are you in fact maxed out on value? Is there in fact nothing more that you could do to deliver more value to clients? I would also write out what value or lack of value are other firms doing. So we mentioned Vanguard as an example, right? And a great firm, and for a certain niche at a certain price point, phenomenal option. But for a niche that says, hey, I need tax planning, I need estate planning, Vanguard is not the option. They just don't even offer that, right? And I'm not slighting Vanguard, they just don't do that, right? If you call the Vanguard number for 30 basis points and you say, hey, what dollar amount should I do for a Roth conversion, or should I name my kid as a beneficiary? They're not gonna have an answer for that. That's not what they do. And so journal out and say, what is the cost and value equation? It's easy to see an advisor's cost. It's hard to see their value.
Yes, and I think focusing on the reason that Vanguard doesn't do that is a really good indicator about value expansion. They're not going to do anything that isn't scalable.
Yeah.
Right. So when you think about typing a question into Google, you're going to get the bulk. You're going to get the Costco version of an answer. You're going to get knowledge. Right. What you really want as an advisor is you want to deliver wisdom, and wisdom is one off. Google or Vanguard gives you the answer. Here's the answer for everybody, which is a vague answer. What isn't scalable is the value expansion. That's what we want to focus on. So that's the individuality. So when we think about taxes, that's an individual thing. Should all of my clients do a $50,000 Roth conversion this year? Well, no, because everybody has different income, everybody has different goals, everybody has different tax pain tolerance. So a firm that's focused on fee compression and scale can't do that because it's a one-off answer. Same thing with beneficiaries. Can you think of anything more unique than beneficiaries? I mean, you could have siblings. You could have people with identical net worths and incomes that could have vastly different goals for legacy goals or charitable goals. So focus on the things that aren't scalable. And I think that's a great indicator on where you could expand value, because Vanguard and Fidelity, maybe there's some technology thing in the future that would allow them to scale that. And I'm sure they're looking into it. But right now, for lifestyle advisors, for solo practitioners, focus on what doesn't scale. And I think that might be a hint in the direction of where you could expand value.
Ben, it just occurred to me that this is an interesting exercise that could help with imposter syndrome, right? So you mentioned that Vanguard and Fidelity, they're not offering tax planning and estate planning yet because it doesn't scale. It's also because it's incredibly difficult. So the fact that you as an advisor listening say, hey, I can even offer just basic level tax planning, right? Roth or not Roth, that's an incredible skill. And we discount that because we listen to this podcast, we listen to the RTS podcast, we listen to Michael Kitces, and we think everyone's talking about this, it's not a big deal. Well, it is a big deal, and it obviously is very hard to do because some of the smartest people in the world that work at Vanguard, they can't figure out how to do this at scale. So take that as a reminder for ourselves. What we do is really hard to do, and in fact, it doesn't scale. It requires an advisor who can meet with a client, look them in the eyes, hear their goals, hear their dreams, their concerns, and then translate that into tax strategy or whatever the value add is.
And it only makes sense that custom work would be at least an average fee, if not a premium fee. Anything custom that you have in your life, you paid more for.
Yeah. That's a great example, right? We recently purchased a new home, and we were looking at having a library put onto one of the walls. And our contractor, great guy, he says, listen, if you just want to go to the store and buy an off-the-shelf library and attach it to the wall, it's only going to cost you a couple $1,000s. But if we go to the cabinet maker and they measure this and they custom build it, it's probably going to be $20,000 or $30,000, right? He says it's going to be a 10x difference to have a custom built one. And Ben, that, to your point, that's the same everywhere. I mean, a car would be probably 100x if you wanted a custom built car versus an off the shelf. And so as advisors, we're building custom cabinetry, custom automobiles, custom financial planning, not pushing go on the software.
So we've got a webinar coming up where I'm going to talk a lot more about my fee raise and pros and cons and things I learned.
Yeah.
And so I was sketching this out, and I paid 40x recently for something that was custom versus something that I can get off the shelf. So my son turned 10 last year, and he and I both share a love for Indiana Jones. At our house, there's only 3 movies, not 4.
Of course, yeah. That's
So I looked, and I can get a dozen cookies at Walmart for $5. Perfectly good cookies. You'd eat them, they'd be fine, no complaints. But we actually, there's a local artist. It's called Unconventional Cookies. If you'd want to Google that, and we'll have pictures on the webinar if you want to tune in. And so she made Indiana Jones cookies with an actual Holy Grail that she opened up. And there was, if you watch the movie, you know what's inside the Holy Grail. She made that out of cookies.
Really?
Yes. And so I paid 40x what you would charge. We got perfectly good cookies at Walmart, but the experience wasn't there, and it wasn't custom, and it wasn't a memory that my son and I will, and our whole family will have forever. We took pictures, we took videos. It was the coolest thing, and the look on my son's face when he got to open up a cookie that was a Holy Grail and then crush it and eat it, that's worth 40x value to me.
Yeah.
The memory that I get to have forever, I wasn't going to get from a $5 box of cookies. Perfectly good cookies, but I get to have that forever, and that was totally worth the 40x that I paid for it. And so you can recreate that with your financial planning practice. What unique deliverables can you provide? What unique value can you provide that your client would say, I understand that there's cheaper out there, but this experience that I'm having is worth a premium.
Yeah, no, I think it's an incredible example. And there's so many of those examples. And I think this goes back to journaling, right? Journal where in your own life are you willing to pay that extra fee? And what is it about that, right? Those cookies had the same ingredients. They probably didn't even taste that much different than the cheap cookies, but that experience was so much better that, like you said, you were willing to pay 40x for that. And that's not that unusual. And consumers are the same way, right? There's nothing that you or I know, Ben, that Google doesn't know, right? Google knows everything. What Google doesn't yet know is, like you said, the wisdom, how to apply it. And consumers I want to go to the doctor and hear that this cough that I'm fighting isn't bronchitis or cancer, even though WebMD tells me the same thing. I want a real human being to look me in the eyes and tell me that I'm willing to pay for that.
Yeah, the one-off.
Yeah.
The one-off. Yep, the one-off experience costs more. It's custom because there's more value there. It's unique to you. And there's nothing more unique to you than your specific financial plan, your goals, the taxes you're going to pay, the legacy that you're going to leave. So custom costs more. Let's at least charge average.
Ben, what were some other thoughts that came up I know we're kind of talking about this fee value, but I know since you just went through this, some other thoughts that came up or lessons that you learned along the way? And again, I know that we're going to, in July, go through this deep on the webinar, but anything else that comes to mind for our podcast listeners?
One of the things that surprised me on my fee raise was when people had an objection, it was more of an objection to how quickly I was raising the fee. What surprised me is clients said that they would have been happier with a more frequent fee raise than an infrequent, bigger fee raise. We only so far have only lost one client. We have just a few remaining before the deadline that have returned the letters. When people would want to negotiate, they would say, well, couldn't we do X% for a certain amount of time and then increase it again? So it wasn't so much like people, I was surprised that they would be more satisfied with a more frequent fee increase than a bigger infrequent fee raise. And I explained this to clients that was surprising to me because it's so difficult to raise fees for clients. Even if you understand in your mind, I'm going to redeploy this and they're going to get more value, it's harder to go back to someone and ask for more money. And that's why I think most advisors just simply don't do it. It's a very hard, uncomfortable thing to do to essentially have your clients rehire you all over again.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I'd forgotten. I'd had a couple clients say the same thing. Hey, that's because we had gone from 1 to 1.5% fee. And they said, oh, it's a dramatic fee. Why didn't you do a little bit each year? And several clients said that. And I explained to them, I said, listen, I don't enjoy raising fees. It's not a fun conversation. I'd rather not do it, but it needs to adjust to the realities of the value that we're providing. And so I sort of ripped the Band-Aid off all at once. But there is certainly a case, and this would be an interesting discussion to have at some point. Should we instead be looking at, the fee needs to go up a small amount, right? From 1.5 to 1.55 to 1.6, maybe it goes up by 5 basis points every year and your value reflects that instead of waiting and doing a big one all at once. Yeah,
it's pretty painful. I'm hoping I'll never raise fees again because it takes a toll on me, but and I'm sure it does for every advisor. But it's something that I think it should be your focus on value expansion, and then you expand your value to a point where you can make the decision in your mind to charge an average fee, at least an average fee.
Yeah, and we could go through a whole thought exercise on that as well, right? Are there changes that I'm avoiding making in my practice that because I'm afraid to do it? And is that in fact a good reason? Or you might intentionally say, hey, I'm never going to do X in my practice. Now, warning, as Ben mentioned, anything you say you're never going to do, you might end up doing. Like I also said I would never hire an advisor, and it was one of my best moves to hire Alex a couple of years ago to join our team. But if you were saying to yourself, hey, I'm just not going to do this because I don't want to do that, then that's definitely something to journal. Are you living an intentional practice, or did you just sort of end up on this path and you're afraid to make a change? And by the way, we're all afraid to make some changes.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your ideal future self? What's your ideal future self 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? And then what's your unique ability? Like, are you operating in your strengths? If you could spend the entire day doing just what you want to do, like the exact thing where you feel like you're making your biggest dent on the universe, what is that? And then through journaling, calculate it out backwards and find out if you're not on that path. You're on a path.
Yeah.
You are a version of your future self. You can either just stay on the path of whatever the universe throws at you, or you can intentionally create it. So the fee raise is all a part of that for me. So.
Yeah, boy, there's so many paths we could go down that. As you're talking about your best work, I mean, think about it from the angle of a client, right? What are the tasks that they're paying you to do, right? Clients are paying you to do everything you do during the day. What are the things that are in fact delivering value to them, maximum value to them, versus just busy work, right? Which if you had more revenue, you could replace. Data entry would be a quick example, or scheduling or checking email, right? These are things that are not worth 40x to the client, but yet you're making them pay for that. And if you had a little bit more revenue and you reinvested that to have your team member do all the scheduling, that would free up so much of your time, your client paid time, to deliver massive value. So it is a whole tangent we could go down on that.
Yeah, maybe your unique ability is to read tax documents or read new legislation. Yeah. Maybe your unique ability isn't even to meet with clients. Maybe it's just to become the next Jeff Levine or Michael Kitces, and you can train someone else to communicate that to clients. So as small business owners, you start out as the chief cook and bottle washer, right?
Yep.
That doesn't mean you have to stay that for your entire career. You might be able to deliver more value to your clients by doing less and either delegating, outsourcing, or automating other elements of your business, everything from answering phones to answering emails.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Ben, this podcast is all about taking action. What are some action items that our listeners can take action on directly related to fee increases or the value conversation, or just action in general that comes to mind for you?
I would say don't focus on the straw man that financial advisors that raise their fees are just trying to extract maximum pain from their clients just so they can put a second story on their yacht. There are legitimate reasons to raise fees, and I think if you start with the value expansion, deliver massive value proposition, and work backwards from there. So I wouldn't focus on the arguments that happen online. I would focus on the unique custom value that you can provide and what that might be worth to a client, future clients and current clients.
Yeah, I love that. And even if you see an advisor and you think, boy, I see that advisor and I somehow know the value they're delivering and I think they're exorbitantly overcharging for it, I still use that as an opportunity to look and say, all right, well, how are they communicating that? How are they creating an experience that their clients are voluntarily willing to pay, assuming there's transparency, voluntarily willing to pay for this? Action item number 2, I would recommend. Ben, of course, is a good friend of ours. We love Ben doing work together. We are doing a panel of success together at the XYPN conference the day before the conference starts on October 8th in Denver. You can go to theperfectria.com or go to XYPN Live and get signed up for that pre-conference, the panel of success. I'll be there. Ben will be there. Stephen from Retirement Tax Services, Micah Shalansky from the Perfect RIA will all be there doing a panel of success on how we doubled the value that we provided to clients this last couple of years while working less. Ben, any other parting thoughts or action items for our listeners?
No, if you're a financial advisor that hates prospecting, hates asking for referrals, but loves delivering massive value, we're hiring. Yeah,
I would definitely take a look at that. Ben, what's a good way to somebody get a hold of you if they're sort of interested in learning more about that position?
I would say follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn.
Okay.
We'll be posting, we're recording this course in advance, but this week that job posting should go live, and we're going to hire somebody by September 1st because Surge starts 6 weeks after that.
Yeah, and again, Ben's a good friend of mine, but this is really a phenomenal opportunity for the right advisor. And if I said, boy, I wanted to work with Ben, I'd go back and listen to all of his podcasts on Retirement Starts Today Radio. I would make sure I knew, like, hey, what is it that Ben is passionate about with clients? And that is how I would approach this position. So, Ben, good luck with adding your first advisor to the practice. And thanks, as always, for your time. And until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect RIA.